Well, hello everyone, Matt Rowe here, bringing you the Zwift Power Up Cycling Podcast. We have a fantastic new addition to the podcast, joining me and Greg today. So, hey Greg, how you doing?
Hey mate, how are you? Yeah, exciting times. We've got a new member on the team.
Absolutely. It is Kristin Armstrong. So, welcome, Kristin.
Thank you. It's great to be joining both of you guys. I love the podcast, so I look forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. It was exciting to have you join us, not only today, but for plenty of time in the future, for future episodes, or at least that's the plan. You may hate talking to us today and never come back. We'll see. But Greg and Kristin, you guys know each other from working together at USA Cycling and stuff in the past, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. We worked briefly together at USA Cycling in Colorado there with the USA track cycling team predominantly, but we actually first met way back in 2003-4 around there when on the US racing scene, and I used to always go up and ask for Kristin's autograph and ask for advice for lead outs and things like that, and she would often ask me for advice on time trials and how she should prepare for the time trial. So no, we go a long way back.
Yeah, those were the good old days.
Good stuff. So how much riding do you do now, Kristin?
You know, I actually spend a lot of time on the dirt. I head out. I like to go out for just, an hour and a half to 2 and just get that work in. And I think, the times that I can't get out and I'm crunched for time and or in the wintertime, I'm hopping on Zwift. And so my mindset is all about, hey, how much can I get in that hour to 2 hour time frame? Efficiency.
And I've got a couple of quick fire questions just to get to know you a bit better. A cafe stop on the bike, what do you order?
Americano.
Starter or dessert?
Starter.
Greg, what do you go for there?
Both. You know me too well by now, Matt.
And Kristin, calories, are they better spent eaten or drank?
Eating.
What bike do you ride?
Felt.
What cleat format do you ride?
Speedplay.
What level are you on Zwift?
Whoa, probably about a 27.
Ooh, I think we're all quite similar then. I think.
Game on.
27, 28.
Game on.
Game on. Yeah, there's a little bit of competition here.
Yep.
And finally, if you could have one superpower.
Superpower. I would fly.
Fly. Cool. Sounds good.
Let's not forget that Kristin Armstrong has retired 3 times, and every time she's come back from retirement has won an Olympic gold medal in the individual time trial. I mean, what a tremendous athlete.
Well, thank you. I think that the rest and retiring for anywhere between 18 months and 24 months, actually, when I look back on that, really was a benefit and helped me come back at that level. Otherwise, I think mentally it would have been really difficult to keep going 4 years after 4 years after 4 years.
Cool.
All right, guys. Well, just thinking world of cycling, what's been kind of going on. Did you guys see at the Junior European Track Champs, the young Italian fella got impaled by that splinter from the track?
Yes, I did. What a mess that looked. Holy smokes.
Yeah. 1 minute he's racing the Euro scratch race. The next thing you know, he's in intensive care. I'm not sure fighting for his life, but he's certainly, in a bad way.
Well, he was lucky because when I say lucky, had it been, a couple of centimetres either direction, it looks like it might have gone through his heart. So, but it's funny. It's not the first time that this sort of incident's happened, and you wonder why. How does this happen? You're on a very beautifully surfaced wooden track. How can you get splinters? I know a good mate of mine, ex-teammate Hayden Ralston, he actually had same thing, lungs punctured by a wooden spear. And then there's the famous photo of Azizul Awang, the Malaysian track sprinter, who's got a 12-inch splinter straight through his calf muscle. But what actually happens is when they crash, they might crash over the bike and the pedals dig in or the handlebars dig in, and that it lifts up a section of the track, and the track's actually laid like a bowling alley. If you can imagine that, it's really thin slices of deep wood So it's really, really hard and tightly packed together. So it lifts up a section, and so they become like a spear essentially. And if the pedal digs in, and then you're sliding along on your backside, it's gonna strike some part of your body. It doesn't happen often, but it causes a real mess.
Yeah, it does. Paul Lorenzo Gobbo is his name, so hope he recovers quickly.
Gobbo. Good on you, Gobbo. That sounds like an Australian last name, doesn't it?
And just a nod to the Tour de France Stage 8 winner, Thomas de Gent. What a ride that was. I mean, pulled a few of his stats off social media. So like 5.25 hours, 311 watts. It's a 204k stage, just shy of 4,000 meters of elevation, 39k average. But the most outstanding bit for me, they reckon he went through 6,500 calories. Now that is a lot of food.
That's a ton of food, isn't it? When you think about how much you can comfortably absorb or empty your stomach is around 300 calories an hour. But I think the nature of the parkour actually added to that, because there was a lot of climbing, short, sharp climbing, so you had a lot of time on the descents. So to accelerate drainage of your carbohydrates, you really, really hydrate, and that'll really help with drainage and absorption of carbohydrates at the lower intensity. And again, remember, he's out there in a breakaway. They're riding sub-threshold, so they are still getting a lot of gastric emptying. I did a little bit of maths on it, and it was it works out he burnt about 29 megajoules for the day, which is about 2.5 our usual intake just for the day. And it's just amazing how much the body can go into deficit. You've got your mobilized free fatty acids in your blood. You've got a glycogen and free fatty acids in your muscle. You've also got stuff from your liver and in your bloodstream. So you have got various sources of where you do get energy from, but there's no way you can actually absorb 6,500 calories over 4 hours. So the key point is how much you take on before. You can store about 500 grams of carbohydrate in your body before you start, but the big key is directly after the race replenishing it. And if he had to do that again tomorrow, he'd be in big trouble.
Yeah, it's probably good that there's a rest day.
Yes, the rest day is always welcome. And I always found during the rest days, and this is part of the reason, is you've depleted yourself so much to get to that rest day, and it's always on the 10th day, it's the longest stretch of racing. And then I would have this sensation of, like, I'd start the next day almost bloated feeling, and that's because with every gram of carbohydrate you take on board, you take 4 grams of water. So you would start the stage and you feel bloated, and your muscles feel really tight and your skin feels tight, and that's just because you've loaded like anything in the rest day. You've not expended anywhere near the calories that you would do during a stage. And I know for a fact that if you started the next day directly uphill, you had to be so careful about what you ate on your rest day, because it would take an hour before you actually started to feel like a bike rider again, and you don't want that happening when you're starting uphill.
No. No, exactly. And I guess if you're a leader or a sprinter on those tough stages, you've got to be on the ball. As a sprinter, you lose contention, and that's an early gruppetto to fall.
Or gruppetto on your own.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, moving on. All right, so the main topic for today is Zwift Academy, which registration is now open for. And you can visit zwift.com/academy and then select whether you either want to enter the men's or the women's academy, and you can register there as well. So in a nutshell, Zwift Academy is Zwift's talent ID program where one male and one female ultimately win pro contracts with Dimension Data Under 23 Continental Team for the men and Canyon SRAM Racing Team for the women. Pretty cool for any aspiring professionals out there.
Yeah, it's such an amazing opportunity, and to have a platform that you can do from your home and that you can do from exactly where you live is phenomenal. I remember back in the day where in order to get opportunity, you had to travel somewhere, you had to go and find races, and the likelihood of that just wasn't that high. A lot of people are working, a lot of people have life. But doesn't mean they're not a strong athlete. And now Zwift creates a platform that you can actually do this and see what you have against the world's best.
Yeah, it's absolutely nuts. I mean, when I was growing up, it was being British. The idea of being a professional cyclist was that's what kind of French and Italians do. It's kind of very much a continental thing. There wasn't really much of a route there, apart from kind of the one or two odd riders that managed to do it. A genuine pathway. But of course, Zwift Academy is not just for those wanting a pro contract. Now, I've done Zwift Academy for the last couple of years, and no way do I want to be pro. And I think Zwift are expecting 100,000 people this year to challenge themselves just to get fit, join that community of riders from all over the world for 8 weeks of workouts, races, group rides, all designed by our very own Kev Poulton. Cheers, Kev. Obviously can't be here at the minute on the Tour de France. And Elliot Lepiski, who kind of designs and manages the men's side. So yeah, it really is an opportunity for anyone to improve and just immerse yourself in a world-class training program from your garage.
It's amazing, isn't it? And I've already been speaking to kids. I was at the track training kids over the weekend, and I probably had 3 or 4 of them asking, when's Zwift Nationals happening? When's the Zwift Academy? Yeah. And I was like, yeah. And I said, one of the young guys, Lawrence Pithy, he won the New Zealand Nationals, and he's just a weapon. Like, he's going to be just incredible when he gets older. And I said, are you lining up in the Zwift Academy? And he goes, I'm too young. And I was just looking at him going, he's taller than me, he's bigger than me. And I'm like, holy smokes, he's going to be he's only 16, so he's got to wait a couple of years yet to get into the Zwift Academy. But like, they're just so G'd about it. And it's really cool to see that New Zealand is finally clicking on to how productive and how important to cycling and your cycling training, how important Zwift actually is now. And the fact that 100,000 people are going to be participating in this, and boom, someone's dream is going to be realised with a pro contract. It's just phenomenal. Yeah,
pretty cool. So if you want in, and of course you do, you can register now, and the program kicks off 5th of August. So all the sessions are detailed in the companion app. So yeah, head to zwift.com/academy, and you can register on there. And again, Kev can't be with us today. He did speak with the 2018 Zwift Academy female winner, Ella Harris, only 20 years old, and now has that pro contract with Canyon SRAM. So yeah, Kev caught up with Ella. So let's hear that chat now.
Well, listeners, we have a very special guest today. Today we're talking to the 2018 Zwift Academy winner, Ella Harris. Ella, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Now, you won the 2018 Zwift Academy, and from there you received a contract with the Canyon SRAM team. Can you tell us how the season's been so far for you?
The season so far has been really good, I think. The team's been really welcoming. I've done lots of cool races. I feel like I've improved a lot as a rider. Had a couple of wee setbacks, but no, overall it's been really positive and probably more than I could have ever hoped for. So yeah, it's been good.
All right, well, we'll get to those setbacks in a moment, but I guess just to let the listeners know more about you. So you must be one of the youngest members on the team?
Yeah, I think there are 2 20-year-olds and 1 19-year-old, and I'm 20, so I'm second or third youngest.
Nice. Okay. And obviously from the accent, Kiwi, New Zealand?
Yes.
Yeah. Now, going from New Zealand and Dunedin, where you live, how did you find the transition to living in Girona?
It was a little bit of a culture shock at first, but once I found my way around, it was pretty good. It was just mainly the day-to-day things like supermarkets, working out, everything I needed, that sort of thing. But the roads were all pretty easy to navigate, and yeah, it was just the whole European way of life. Even just taking a train was a bit of a new experience for me, but no, it was good. But
it's a good point though. Like a lot of Southern Hemisphere riders, to make the journey to Europe and just live that different lifestyle, it can be quite intimidating and quite hard sometimes, can't it?
Yeah, there are lots of things that you don't really think about that will be issues, but you sort of come across them as you go. You've just got to work your way around them, but yeah, it's just one of those things.
Yeah, nice. Okay. Now, you said the season has had its negatives and its positives. We'll get to the negatives in a moment. But the positives, you've won yourself some jerseys in a few races?
Yeah, I won myself a Young Riders jersey at the Volta a Burgos, so that was quite exciting. Didn't really expect that one, but it was nice to grab it anyway.
Yeah, okay. So leading on from that, how have you found the transition to World Tour racing? Has it been what you expected? Is the gap bigger, or you're comfortable there?
To be honest, I found it relatively easy. At first, it was a little bit of a step up, but I felt as though my fitness was there. So it was just a matter of working out the other things like the positioning and the tactics and the strategies and the different dynamics I hadn't really come across before. But no, yeah, it's been pretty smooth.
So before Zwift Academy, what was your sporting background?
Had been cycling for a few years, and I'd raced in Australia and in the US and in Canada, but I hadn't done too many big UCI races. But I was just slowly working my way up, hopefully wanting to make the transition to Europe at some stage. But the Zwift Academy sort of provided that for me, so yeah.
Nice. Okay. I guess now the harder part of racing overseas is when injuries occur. So you've had a couple of incidents?
Yes, yeah. So I did my collarbone 2.5 months ago at the Healthy Aging Tour. So luckily I had surgery on that and it all went pretty smoothly. So I was back on the bike within 2 weeks on the road, and then I was racing within 3. But then I came back home where I am now in Dunedin for a winter break, and unfortunately I hit a rock and broke it again. So I had surgery on that, and I'm back on the road after, again, just under 2 weeks. So yeah, it's just taking things cautiously now and not crashing again, but it all seems to be recovering well. So
now, is it true that on the second incident, had your coach actually asked you to have time off the bike at that time?
I may or may not have been in a rest week.
Nice. But on your return from injury, you used Zwift to begin training. How did that go for you?
Yeah, it was really good. It kept me honest. It's definitely a good way of getting in really intense training, really quality, without actually having to go outside. And you only need to do like an hour and you're pretty much done. You're at your limit. So yeah, it's really good. Okay,
so I guess for complete transparency for the listeners, we need to let them know that I am actually your coach as well. That's why I made the comment about the accident.
Yes.
But for me, when an athlete injures themselves and in some ways they're forced onto the ergo to train, for me, I'm actually, not excited by it, but it doesn't concern me because I know that a good block of indoor training, you're going to come back with very good fitness. And we saw with you coming back from the first collarbone break, your fitness was very good, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was surprising. I got back on the road and the first couple of days I was a little bit out of breath because going from the erg to the road, it's always a bit of a strange transition. But once I got through that, I was flying up the hills. I couldn't quite believe it.
Nice. It doesn't surprise me, actually. It's always a positive.
Yeah, definitely seems that way.
So talking about training, you're a World Tour rider, so you're at the top end of the sport. Can you describe to the listeners what a typical week of training looks like for you in terms of volume, how many hours, intensity, that kind of thing?
When we were in a solid sort of phase of training, it tended to be 7 days a week, actually, I think. And I got upwards of 600 Ks, but normally it's, I think, between 500 to 600, maybe a rest or just an easy 60 to 90 minute spin. And then within that week, tends to be a couple of 4-hour rides, 3-hour rides, some longer efforts. I haven't done too much high intensity sprint sort of work, but generally upwards of 2 hours each day.
Okay, that's a good description. And what kind of a rider do you think you are? Like, we don't want to pigeonhole riders as a certain type of athlete, but I guess what are your strengths when you race?
I haven't really worked that one out yet. I've been asked it a few times, but I'm not too sure. I'm not much of a sprinter. I really enjoy the longer climbs. I like the hills. Not too steep though. And I haven't really explored time trialing before, but I'd quite like to. But I tend to be able to hang in there when it gets tough or it's a race of attrition. So I think the term is roulette rider.
Yeah, that's it, perfect. Yeah.
I'm not too sure though, but I think that could be my category.
Yeah, no, you're right. I don't really like pigeonholing young riders as a certain type of rider because we don't know what your limits are yet. We're still exploring that. So we don't want to label you as a time trialer or a climber. So we just do everything like you said then. You're a rule air type of rider, which means you're good at most things. Good on, as you said then, you're very good on the punchy, very hard type of races, and that's what you're excelling in, and that's great. Now, the 2019 Zwift Academy is starting soon. Do you have any advice or tips for those athletes that are going to join the academy this year?
Yes, I would, if you're having any doubts, I'd just say sign up, see how it goes. You've got nothing to lose really. If you've got big aspirations and you don't quite meet those, it's still excellent for fitness and you learn so much about yourself and about how, like, what you are as a rider. But yeah, it's an awesome opportunity and the prize at the end is so huge. So I don't know why you wouldn't give it a go if you're able to.
Excellent. And when you started Zwift Academy in 2018, were you expecting it to be super hard, or how did you find it? Was it hard but you were comfortable with the sessions? How did you find it when you first started it?
I think it was definitely a lot harder than I could have ever anticipated it being. The sessions were very tough. I think the first qualifying 10 sessions, they were bearable, apart from the power tests, so like a 10-minute, 4-minute, I think there was a 25-second one, and a 1-minute. They were all really hard, and it wasn't just doing those all-out efforts, it was like the build-up throughout the session to them as well. So it was like various, I think in the 4-minute session there might have been 3 hard above FTP 4-minute efforts before you even got to the maximal test. So they were all really challenging. And then the semi-final sessions were even harder than that. So yeah, it was definitely hard. And I also think it's the mental side of things as well. Like you can't focus on what other people are doing too much. You've just got to be confident in what you're doing and yeah, just don't read into too much you see online.
Yeah. So I guess during the Zwift Academy process, do you get any feedback on how you're performing, or are you just completing the sessions, I guess, blindly not knowing where you stand against the opposition?
Yeah, it was a bit like that really. You just complete the sessions and hope that the right people are seeing them and that your numbers are high enough to be considered. But yeah, it is a bit of an unknown until you get the email saying that you're through. Yeah.
Well, I can definitely say that over the years of Zwift Academy, it certainly has progressed, and to find a rider in the world like yourself was evidence that Zwift Academy works. You've been a huge success so far, so congratulations on that, and we can
Thank you very
keep
much.
moving forward. So moving on from that, we're just in the process of having the mid-season break and getting back into the second half of the season. So what have you got coming up in the second half of the season?
So I'm heading back to Girona on the 14th of July, and then from there we'll do a little bit of training in Girona. There might be the odd race before the end of July, but the main focus is on the Colorado Classic, and before that I'll be doing Ride London, and yeah, we'll just see whatever other races I might be put in for. I think Ardèche could be a possibility, and then I'll be finishing off my season with Guangxi in China, so that'll be the final race.
And any aspirations for World Championships?
Yes, but I don't want to get my hopes up.
Okay. No, well, all you can do is what you're doing everything right so far, so it's certainly a possibility.
Yeah, I hope so.
Okay, couple of short questions to finish off here. Favourite Zwift session? What kind of efforts do you like doing on Zwift?
To be honest, I really like the sort of sessions that you haven't been giving me. I like the ones where you get lots of recovery and they're quite maximal efforts, but the ones that you've been giving me have just been lots of sort of towards threshold efforts, but not really having any downtime, so you've just been getting progressively tired without much recovery. So I haven't been enjoying those too much, but I do like 3-minute sort of efforts with good recovery in between, like at least 5 minutes, really easy.
Okay, so I'm hearing here that you need more recovery. Okay, we'll take that on board,
yes.
But hey, it is training and we are looking for the training effects, so that's what it takes. Yeah. All right, now this one's a question from social media online. Now, it's a strange one. Apparently you have a love affair with porridge. Is this true?
Yes, I do enjoy a good bowl of porridge. You can't start your day off a better way.
Yeah, okay. Now leading on from that, Instagram, how can people follow your porridge intake and different ideas for it? How do we follow you on Instagram?
My Instagram username is Ella Harris, but with 3 L's and 3 R's. So ELLL and then HARRR with the rest of the name in there as well. But yeah, just search me on Instagram and I'm pretty visible.
No, you do really well on social media. It's a good way for fans to have a look at the lifestyle of a professional athlete. It's not all training and living in Girona. There's lots of things to explore and see as well. So it does give a good insight into the life of a professional cyclist.
Yeah, exploring the porridge recipes out there.
Excellent. All right, Ella, well, thanks for catching up with us. Good luck for the rest of the season, and we can catch up with you further into the year.
Thank you very much.
All right, guys. So we just heard from Kev and Ella there. You've got a young rider making a big move to the other side of the world to pursue her cycling dream. That's a huge commitment, absolutely life-changing. I kind of likened it to moving away for uni, where you're going to grow up quick.
Definitely. I think there's so much that you have to endure. You think of it as, okay, I've nailed this academy. I've won the academy. I've won a pro contract. But what does that really mean? It means that you're moving to a foreign country. It means that you're now integrating into a team. But not only that, there's a lot of, integration to, what's the skill set? What do you have? How much pack experience do you have? There's so many elements that don't even have to do with the physical output that you're able to do. And so for Ella, I'm just 100% impressed with the season she's had, but also the results that she's been able to have in the integration she's had on Canyon SRAM. It's been impressive.
Do you think the nationality has anything to do with just the ability to pack up and leave home? Because I was just thinking, like New Zealand, Australia, like we've touched on this before, Matt, is like when we leave to go and pursue our dreams as a professional cyclist, it's all or nothing. You're not going over there to fail, because if you do fail, the chances are you're never coming back. Whereas if you live in Belgium or France or something like, you can go back to mum and dad's house and have a crack again next season. So I think there's a certain mentality from people down under that really enables us to integrate into any culture that we end up planting ourselves in. And I remember when I was coaching Tom Scully, the first thing I said to him when he came over to Europe was, make sure that you make your home or your flat, make it really, really homely. Go buy yourself a nice couch, go buy yourself a PlayStation. I said, so you're looking forward to getting home from a race and it's home. You've got a nice couch to sit down and relax. You've got a comfortable bed. And instead of like having this cold, dingy flat that you're like, oh, I'm hating this place, I can't wait to get back to New Zealand. So I think it's there's quite a large combination of things that help you integrate overseas.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a very good point. I always think about the Isle of Man. So I think they seem to kind of bat above their weight, or punch above their weight, really, because they got two until Pete retires. So Pete Kenyuk and Mark Cavendish, the two obviously well-known Isle of Man cyclists, but the whole population of the Isle of Man where they come from could fit in like a big football stadium. Yet they've got at one point they had 3 world-class bike riders, and I think one of the things that helps with that ability and helps to develop them is their hunger, because they're making such an effort compared to all their rivals. And obviously that doesn't sound much in comparison to coming over from New Zealand, of course, to Europe. But completely get that point. Very similar point, isn't it, I think? Yeah, absolutely. Again, Ella mentioned about coming back from injury. So in her first year as a pro, last thing you want to be doing is getting a major injury. She's broken a collarbone twice. But what I was impressed about is she was back training within 2 weeks. Obviously, surgery now allowing riders to get back much quicker. But that must still be quite frustrating for her.
Oh, I can imagine. I've been, been in the same situation. It's when it's an accident and it's like, you're looking forward or you're about to peak or you're even during a race and you crash out for this sort of reason. It is frustrating. But, it also makes you hungry again too. It's like, right, I have now only got 4 weeks. I've got to be on this ergo. I've got to be smashing. And that's when a lot of the Zwift training comes in, and it's so efficient. It makes you so powerful that often I've come back from injuries, a better bike rider than when I crashed. It's remarkable.
Yeah, I think it's hard to explain to people who haven't had a setback in their career. Once you do have a setback, it's easy to speak about, hey, yeah, I actually am stronger. And I have similar experiences where I've had many setbacks, and you think that the world is over at that moment and you're all alone. But in reality, sometimes we get so into our training and we're so focused that whether you get injured or you somehow have a bad winter cold, you look back on those training days and you're like, you know what? If I didn't have that rest or setback, I might have just been a little bit overtrained for, possibly the Giro or that next big race. And so sometimes it's a blessing in disguise.
Just thinking about that, when you're living away from home in Europe, like Ella is, there must be a risk of cycling becoming a bit too all-consuming. I've always dreamt of being a pro bike ride. All of a sudden, bam, it's real. And you wake up in the morning, you go training, you come back and you think about training, you're resting. Likely you're rooming with other cyclists, you're watching cycling on TV. It's kind of everywhere. And that's got to be another challenge for a young rider as well.
Yeah, I mean, I am a huge advocate of, continuing education, and you can do so many things online these days to occupy the mind, but so that when you are down physically or you're trying to not focus so much on that workout you just had or the injury that you're trying to overcome, there's just so many things that can engage you in a different way to build you for your future, because, obviously we all know cycling in your career doesn't last forever. So what can you do, and what tools can you actually continue to, use to just gain that knowledge for the future?
Absolutely. And looking at the typical training week that Ella mentions, 500-600 kilometers, riding 6-7 days a week. But interestingly, mainly longer efforts with limited high intensity sprint work. So I think 3 to 4 hours is kind of a general day. But interestingly, Ella was saying she likes the capacity efforts, the short kind of 3-5 minute efforts, but that's not prescribed too much in a training.
As a coach, I believe that you get to know every one of your athletes as an individual, and you look at what their larger goals are. And I've worked with many athletes that have definitely, they're naturally talented with the shorter intervals, and they can go out and, probably a lot like Greg, sprint and have that great finish, unlike myself, who has a strength for focusing in and honing in for 20-30 minutes. And so I think it's really unique to that rider, and also the kind of the courses, or whether they're doing one-day races, or are they really trying to become a good stage racer? Are they in a role on a team where they're a domestique? And so what is their body going to need to be really good in this role as well? So I do think that obviously shorter intervals are sometimes easier on the mind because they don't last as long, just because I can say that only because of the time trialing training that I had to do, and I had to do those longer threshold efforts. But I think that depending on the rider, depending on the time of season I think that's where those intervals fall or don't fall.
Yeah, there's a sweet spot for everything, isn't there? And I don't think that they can absolutely be ignored. And like you said, it's time of the season. But I know Ella obviously quite well. She's from my hometown in Dunedin, and you think of, like, all of a sudden she goes to Europe and has to climb these 10-15 minute climbs. We have nothing like that in New Zealand. Yes, we have a lot of climbs, but they're just short and sharp, and that's why she's probably naturally quite good at the 3 to 5 minute efforts. But you have to adapt the body, and I remember when I first went to Europe, that's what I had to do too. I was really good for the short 5-10 minutes, but anything over that I would really struggle. When that was the coaches then put me on a lot of work to try and just to lift that functional threshold power, so I could actually stay in the gruppetto without having to dig into massive amounts of resources to make it to the finish of a bike race. That was plain and simple what the theory was. I had to get to the end of the bike race so I could then perform a sprint. There's no use being the best sprinter and not even getting over some easy climbs. So I can imagine that's part of the whole training program and developing Ella as a rider.
Exactly. And it's funny the comment Kev made, saying this is about training what's best for you, what's going to give you the best response, not what you love. Otherwise, we'd all go sit in coffee shops all the time. And I was asking Kev a bit more about it, and he was saying, from the testing protocol that he uses, he knows that Ella is a very aerobic athlete. She hasn't got that much fast twitch, so pretty much the polar opposite to you, Greg. And then to improve her VO2, you need a high volume of threshold work, which you can improve through short anaerobic work with short recovery, or the classic 3 to 8 minute efforts. But where Ella sits in that anaerobic capacity VO2 spectrum, she responds to the threshold work better. So it comes back to the point where, we said it over the last couple of podcasts, where people with a really poor anaerobic sprint power think that to improve, they need to hit that high volume of neuromuscular, real top-end work. But that only works for riders who have lots of fast-twitch fibers. So for Ella, that'll be pointless. So it just comes back to the point you guys are both saying as well. It's everyone's an individual, and there's no one-size-fits-all. And even though Ella's kind of crying out for, give me these 3 minutes flat-out efforts, sorry, Coach Kev says no.
Obviously, we all have those coaches, and as an athlete, I just recall there were so many riders who had a coach where they would wake up and they would follow everything to what that coach is saying, and then you have riders who would wake up and question their coach and follow the other teammates. And I just think it's so important to find that coach and that relationship, and the relationship that sounds that Ella and Kevin have is very unique and special because she has to trust Kevin, and Kevin can explain the why behind it. And in a couple of years we'll see Ella will come out on top because of the methodology that Kevin's using.
And this is what you can expect if you take part in the Zwift Academy process, make it through to the final selection. You're going to be exposed to this. So, and just looking at the Zwift Academy process, we've got some insight from Kev being one of the two Zwift Academy coaches. We can play you now. And there is some great insight into what's involved, what the coaches look for, and some of the sessions you can expect, including tips on how to approach them. So here's Kev with a couple of minutes just outlining some of the finer details of the Zwift Academy process.
Hi everyone, it's Kevin Poulton here from Zwift Academy, and I'm here to speak with you about what you can expect from the Academy this year and give you some tips and tricks on how to best get through the sessions. Along with Elliot Lipsky from Team Dimension Data, we are the two coaches that have created the workouts for this year's Academy. And for us as coaches, it really is an exciting opportunity to be running a worldwide talent identification program and to give athletes the opportunity to go from training in their own home to a professional contract racing around the world. So it really is an exceptional program. But most importantly, Zwift Academy is about fun. And it's about training with other people, it's about experiencing structured training, and it's about being part of a great community to get you through the program. I would really encourage you during the program to be part of the forums, ask questions, look for advice, and most importantly, encourage other members during their journey through Zwift Academy as well. Now, what we're looking for from the efforts in Zwift Academy is to get an idea of your strengths and weaknesses. And to do this, we give you sessions that allow you to complete your power duration curve. This is the curve that is produced when we look at the power you produce over certain periods of time. So for example, we look at 10-second efforts, 20 seconds, 1 minute, 4 minute, 10 minutes and 20 minutes. So when we plot these points on the curve, we get a nice visual look of what kind of rider you are, and it allows us to compare you to the other members of Zwift Academy. When you complete the session, the structured workouts have what we call free ride sections. And this is where you have no ceiling to the power you can produce, and you can go all out and produce your best power. Whereas with normal structured workouts, there is a ceiling of the effort you can produce, and it doesn't really give you the opportunity to produce your best power. So for example, in one of the workouts, we're looking at 25-second power. The workout gives you a good warm-up, it then gives you some pre-ride efforts in terms of looking at the intensity you could be holding, but we also give you plenty of rest before you do your free ride effort as well. And then when you get to the 25-second free ride, what we're going to see here is you're going to hit your peak power in the first 5 to 10 seconds, and it's going to be a huge drop-off in power after that. And this is normal. So for short efforts up to 30 seconds, we always see a really high peak in power to begin with, and then there's a really big drop off after that. So don't be afraid about the drop off, just hang on for as long as you can and hold the best power that you can. The other session you'll do is looking at 1 minute power. And again, after a warm up, you're guided through some efforts where you're given experience on what the duration feels like, what kind of intensity to aim for. And while you're doing these efforts too, you're also showing your average power for the efforts as well. And again, with this 1 minute effort, they're probably going to see some drop off in power, but this is more of a paced effort. Whereas you're going to go out in the first 20 seconds where it's going to be hard but comfortable, and then hopefully midway you can lift a little bit, and then after that just hang on as best that you can, lift again if you can, or try and hold off that drop off the best that you can. And finally, in the 4 minute effort, this is where we really want to see some very good pacing from you. This is where we hope to see no drop off in power at all. And to do this, it really does require a steady effort to begin with, a controlled effort, and then again try and lift in the middle, and then after that maintain, or if you can, lift again towards the end and do the best that you can. The 4 minute effort is probably one of the hardest efforts, but if you do go out too hard, you're going to see a drop off in power and you're not going to be able to give your best effort. The beauty about Zwift Academy is that you can go back and repeat the sessions and try and do better again. And with any test session, there is an element of learning the test effort. So you will get better, not through increased fitness, but just by having experience in what the effort feels like. So feel free to go back and repeat the effort as well. The other part of Zwift Academy will provide you with racing opportunities. And during these races, some of them involve long climbs, and on these climbs we're going to be able to see your power over 10 to 15 minute efforts, and from there we get a good indication of what kind of threshold power you might be able to hold at a longer effort. And the other efforts are structured workouts where we're looking at simulating the demands of racing. We're looking at your ability to be able to reproduce race efforts, to be able to repeat the effort, and also your ability to recover as well. But most importantly, there's a wide range of efforts there. Do your best in all of them, and this will build your power duration curve for yourself to also see what your strengths are, and for us as coaches to see what your strengths are as well, and how you stack up against the other members of the Zwift Academy. And finally, have fun with it. I really encourage you to have fun, encourage others, and for those of you that are chasing those contracts, good luck with it. You never know where you might be in 6 months. It is possible to go from training in your home to being on the world tour within 6 months' time. Good luck.
There we go. Some good insight there from Kev. But anyway, let's look at a session. So again, I think we'll take what kind of Ella was talking about, kind of 3 minute efforts being one of her favorite sessions to do. And that kind of fits quite well with the free ride functionality in the Zwift training plan. So, guys, what's your take on general kind of short, flat-out efforts? 3, 4, 5 minute capacity efforts.
Pain.
Pain. Yes. Crying. Pain.
No, but and it's, we touched on it just before. It's fast twitch versus your slow twitch fibers. If you're loaded with fast twitch fibers, they're the ones that just chew through your carbohydrates. Byproduct of that is hydrogen ions. So it's massive amounts of hydrogen ions, which is, lactate is guilty by association. But they're really, really high intense, and you can actually adapt to them. Obviously, there's a thing called lactate tolerance, and that's actually doesn't mean you actually buffer the lactic ions any better. You actually get used to performing with very, very high amounts of lactic acid in the blood system. Sprinters, pursuit riders, you'll often see readings of 15, 16 millimolars per deciliter of blood of these lactate molecules. So, but then if you gave that to a time trialist or a hill climb specialist or whatever, if they tried to function with that sort of lactic acid rolling through the system, they wouldn't be able to turn their legs. So one of it's lactate capacity and one's lactate tolerance, and I think they both go hand in hand. And
I think it's all about what you're trying to get out of that session, because all too often you see cyclists going out and training and they may love the 3 minute, what they would call VO2. However, now what's the work rest ratio and how many are you putting back to back? And are you hitting that high end number? If you're really focused on clearing that lactate and really pushing that envelope on that VO2, then you have to have a lot more rest than most people actually are doing. Sometimes you're trying to do these things back to back, and at the end of the day, the minute you can't hit that top number and you're not in that zone any longer, a lot of times you just need to pull that plug because you're not really hitting, you're down into that threshold number again. And so I think that the work rest ratio is just critical when you're setting up these shorter intervals. And really the purpose is, are we doing over-unders, or are we truly doing VO2 to max to increase that capacity?
And that's what I was touching on, is that so one becomes lactate tolerance when you're not getting enough rest, because you're actually producing more and more lactate on top of each other. You're not clearing it quick enough. And then the VO2 stuff is clear it and hit again, go hard for those numbers. And that's exactly what I was alluding to.
Yeah.
Yeah. But also learning to do these type of efforts, because you need, it's pretty hard to actually get the effort out over 3 minutes. I think what a lot of people do first off when they try to do, say, a 3-minute capacity effort is either start too hard and then just blow up and kind of give in, or don't start hard enough and actually turns into kind of a threshold, 2 minutes of threshold, then and a 1 minute big spike. So there's a lot of technique in doing these sessions. And we talk about learning to test, learning to do the FTP test and the ramp test. I think it's also true of shorter capacity efforts. But before we started recording, Kristin, you were talking about learning to Zwift and the importance of being able knowing what you're doing on Zwift before you start on the Zwift Academy program.
Definitely. I think there is a period where not only are you fit outdoors riding, but there's definitely a transition to what we would say being our best indoors, and having a period of time that you're actually riding indoors so that you have that adaptation and you have the efficiency that's required to ride indoors. If you think about it, we're not coasting indoors, we're not stopping at stoplights indoors, and so that rest, it's very similar, I find, from going outside on the road bike to indoor on the road bike. I find a very similar transition from when I ride mountain bike on the trails to road cycling, because on the mountain bike, I'm out going on these single tracks and I'm coasting for a lot of the time, that I'm coming uphill, powering really high. And I find that the indoor work is very similar, or the transition to the road bike, because indoors, you just don't stop pedaling. You don't have those brakes.
So I think if you're going to stand your best chance of performing in the Zwift Academy and you're new to Zwift, jump on and get Zwift in as much as you can over the next week or so before it all starts. All right. Cycling terminology then. Greg, you're going to be explaining. I've got a term for you. Kristin, you right to time? Because Greg does tend to talk a lot and he'll go over if you don't keep a clock on him.
All right. I'm ready.
Cool. All right then. Greg, you got 30 seconds, my friend. I've got to try to pronounce this right. To describe the term randonneuring.
Randonneuring. That is when you go for a ride with Matt Rowe and you're climbing up a climb and he starts talking into your ear about how good he used to be, how amazing he could have been, how easy he's finding this climb, and how much that I look like I'm suffering. It's more of a Matt Rowe, how good I am, how good I coulda, woulda, shoulda been, and how good I will continue to be, and how bad and fat and overweight I look.
And you're done.
Was I close?
What the hell was that?
Is that not what it means?
Maybe.
In Idaho, I think it means just something a little bit different, but that's just Idaho. We go out in the back country with packs on our bike and we go out for adventures. We understand Kiwi. I mean, we're just a little different. It's fine.
It's an international podcast, right? International podcast.
I thought it was you just had to randomly listen to random ramblings from Matt Rowe.
Fair enough. We're good. All right, is that your final answer, Greg?
Well, final answer.
Final answer. Fair enough. And just like Kristin, I have a slightly different understanding of randonneuring, which is it's super long distance events like 200-300k rides where you have to pass through checkpoints. Audaxing is another term we use for it in the UK. Cool. All right, guys. Quick fire question. So just need a number on this one and we can kind of elaborate after. Optimum temperature for a Zwift den.
16 degrees Celsius.
International, once again.
Yeah.
68 degrees.
Cool. Yeah, I'm going to go around 20 degrees, normal house temperature. So what's that translate into Fahrenheit?
70.
70. There you go. So I'm going about 70. And I'm thinking that's kind of normal room temperature. So if I was to have a Zwift, then I'd want it to just be quite normal. But I do like getting a good sweat on Zwift. That's one of the features I do quite enjoy.
I like it to be a little chilly because I've got this something with me when I get on an ergo and I get on Zwift. I always probably go a little bit too hard. And, oh, mate, I sweat like this is a family show. I sweat a lot when I'm on the ergo. So it's, even with the fans cranking, I just need it to be a nice, cool environment for me.
Yeah, sometimes I think I justify a shorter workout by not having any fans on me, because then I, get quite hot and I'm thinking, wow, I felt like I just spent 3 hours indoors, and really it was an hour. So I prefer no fans, but that's just, maybe it's a mental thing.
Interesting. And obviously we spoke before about the impact of heat on the kind of training stress. So training in the heat is actually an added stimulus. So I think, turning the fan off and riding for a bit shorter not only makes you feel like you've worked out because you sweated more, but it also is adding an extra stress to the body.
Because that'll raise your core temperature, and obviously it takes a while for that core temperature to finally drop, and you're burning a lot of calories. It's called EPOC, that exercise post-oxygen consumption. The amount of work you're doing after your training is elevated when you have an elevated core temperature. There's no question. And again, it's a misconception that you need to hydrate during these ergo sessions. You actually don't. You can. And we talked about those marathon runners losing up to 9% of their body weight in fluid. So it doesn't actually affect performance over these shorter 1 hour, 1.5 hour efforts. It's the rise in core temperature, which is essentially going to slow you down.
Just on that hydration point, I guess that's assuming that you go into the session well hydrated.
Correct.
Yeah, cool. All right, guys. Q&A then. We got got a couple of questions here. First question is from Isla Curtis, and Isla's question reads, I'm interested in your thoughts on a Zwift sprint versus in real life sprint. I'm able to produce a much better sprint on Zwift versus my cycling club and other local riders than I can on the road. I think they're very different, but what exactly is it? What do you make of that then, Greg?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because my power on the road and on Zwift is actually very, very similar. I know, for example, Greipel's power on the ergo and on the in real life is very similar. So what I would suggest is there's a lot of energy transfer being lost with her technique on the sprint on the road. You think about on the ergo, your bike is fixed, your wheels are fixed, there's no movement, so all your energy that you're pushing down on the pedals is actually going to the power meter. Whereas if you're on a road bike, there can be a lot of handlebar movement, there can be a lot of body movement. Yeah, I think typically speaking, the power differences aren't a lot different, and she said that she can match them on Zwift. So I'm guessing, but not in the real life. So I honestly believe that without having seen her or anything like that, a lot of it could just be her technique and her sprinting on the road.
That coordination, isn't it? Kind of just aligning your head all the way through your hips down to your legs, aligning your whole body on the road, super important. Also aerodynamics, I guess.
Correct.
Whereas I've got a friend who can jump on Zwift and over 10 seconds produce way more power than me. But then out on the road, literally can't. This doesn't translate. So I completely get what Isla's saying, and I think you're right there, Greg. It's that kind of coordination piece is a big bit power transfer.
Yeah, I think that's something to look at, and have a really strong core, strong upper body, arms strong so that you're not swaying all over the road, and again that aero position, because once we go above 45-50 k's an hour, it's one of your biggest factors is wind aerodynamics and the resistance from the wind.
So remotely, obviously, it's hard to guide someone to be a faster sprinter, technique wise, improve their technique. Have you got any tips or advice there you can kind of suggest remotely for someone to try and adopt, or for Isla to try and adopt specifically?
Absolutely. Yeah. The simplest thing to do is slow down to about 10 kilometers an hour out on the road, put it in about the 53, 15 or 14, and nice, smooth, concentrate on a nice, smooth drive standing start for 15 pedal strokes. And what this does is it helps you engage all your sprinting muscles. You'll go up right through the whole range of cadence, up to probably 115 RPM, and keep your body nice and stiff, so it's engaging all your sprint muscles. And if you do sets of 5 or 6 of these, and you do that maybe 3 times a week, you'll notice easily within I guarantee within 3 sessions, your standing start peak power will be a lot higher. And then when you actually go to sprint from a rolling speed, again, your technique will be 100 times better, because you've already opened these pathways and this coordination. Your body's already become stronger, your core's stronger, so your sprint speed will automatically be faster.
Top man. Cheers, Greg. Our second question, I think this is, pluck this one out. I think it's right up your street, Kristin. So this question is from Lloyd Lewis, and Lloyd's question reads, I'm loving time trial mode on Zwift and was getting faster and faster. Those improvements have stalled. I've been doing some three times 10-minute FTP efforts in a session, some over-unders, and some short 3 to 5 minute capacity efforts. Am I missing anything key from my weekly specific training for time trialing?
That's a great question. I think that there is one workout I can specifically think of. It's one of my favorites, which is including some strength endurance work where you're pedaling at a lower RPM. And depending on your history with your knees or back pain or hip pain, you want to be careful. And so you want to start more on the conservative level. I like to do these around 65 RPM, where I'll go and I'll first start and see how maybe 3 by 10 minute at a strength endurance pace would feel. I would move it up to 4 or 5 over time. On the indoor trainer, you might want to back that up into more like 5 by 7 minutes, so you're not going as long, because you are really still, there's not much movement on the bike. And so you can switch it up as much as possible, but make that goal when you first do it 30 minutes total. You want to obviously focus more on the strength and the output rather than how high a power you're getting. Really, it's a muscular endurance workout. It really helped my time trialing. And then the second piece that I see in your question really is when you mentioned that you do 3 by 10 minute FTP efforts. One of the misconceptions that a lot of time trialists train is they're training right at that FTP, which is at 100%. But truly your FTP is what you can do for an hour. There are all too often time trialists that are spending so much time doing the work. However, they're just in just a slightly lower zone than I would work in, which is right at 100. If you can try to bump that up to just above threshold of right above your FTP around 105 and have that equal rest. So you can do that session 3 by 10, but take that full 10 minutes, equal recovery afterwards, and do that again. I spent a lot of time between 105 and 110% of my FTP doing my time trial efforts, because truly when you're time trialing for 20, 30 minutes, you are right above threshold. It's a very uncomfortable zone to be in.
And of course, that couple of percent over 100 suddenly goes from quite comfortable to world of pain.
It definitely does. And I feel like sometimes if we don't hit that, we get very comfortable. And then you wonder, well, I'm doing all this training. So the work's not the problem for most cyclists because they have these big goals. It's just, are we working in that right zone to produce the exact output that we need and that adaptation to our body to be our best?
One other thing we should touch on with Lloyd is there is that natural plateau in form also. Let's just say he just began his time trial training, and you're going to see massive gains to begin with because all of the metabolic pathways and adaptations that are happening, and then you are going to get a plateau. There's no question. Everybody in the world has this plateau, but I think with the answers from Kristin there, it's maybe try some of those efforts just to keep that form increasing.
Lovely. Good advice, guys. Thank you. All right, Greg, Kristin, great talking. Speak to you on the next podcast.
Sounds good. Thank you.
It was a pleasure. We'll catch up next time.